What's up, everybody? I'm Devin from Dr. Garage. If you've been watching my YouTube videos or even following along on Facebook or Instagram, you know that I'm in the middle of adding a supercharger to my Beams 3S GE powered AE86 drift car, which is what's behind me. I've been drifting my car naturally aspirated for about 3.5, 4 years now on the Beams. It is such a great improvement in power. The car is really well balanced. Naturally aspirated, I'm making 200 horsepower and 150 foot-pounds of torque at the wheels. For an 8.6, this seems to be really great for most things. But what I found is that on higher speed courses, I don't quite have the torque to keep the tires spinning in third gear. So it was time to look at forced induction. I looked at turbochargers, I looked at superchargers, I looked at all kinds of different options to try and get the torque that I wanted, and I ended up finding a Blitz supercharger kit that is meant for a stock engine management Altezza, and that's what I've fitted to my engine. The reason why I opted for this supercharger is that it gives me the extra bit of horsepower and torque that I'm looking for without going overboard to where it's going to start hurting my reliability. I've read forums and Facebook posts from people that have been running this supercharger kit on their Altezza for years without any issues. So that's really what I wanted to find, is I wanted to find something that was going to be reliable and that was going to last a long time. Plus, I really like period correct parts. That's why I buy wheels like these. I bought some SSR Mark IIs not too long ago. I have a pair of Advent A3Ds. I used to have a set of SSR Longchamps, and I just picked up a set of two-piece Watanabe RS 8-spoke wheels. Super excited about those because I'm rebuilding them to some custom specs. But as you can tell, I really like period correct stuff, which is why I drift an AE86. I also have some period correct parts on my car already. Like, I have a Nobi Booth spoiler, which is really hard to find in the US. I had to get that from Japan. I have a Urus turned down exhaust tip, which is just a small thing, but I love the way it looks. I pretty much try to do whatever I could to modify this car to be period correct in the way it looks and it appeals. However, I've done other modifications to it to make it drive like a modern drift car. I've built custom steering and suspension on the car to try and get it to drive better, and yes, I am still using AE86 parts. Regardless, this supercharger kit is awesome, and it is exactly what I was looking for. To source hard to find Japanese parts, there's all kinds of ways that you can find these things. I was perusing Yahoo Japan auctions, I was perusing Kruber, Up Garage, Jesse Streeter, all kinds of different sources, and this one I actually ended up finding in the Facebook Marketplace. I bought it from a fellow 8.6er who also used to drift a Beams 8.6, Kyle Turnage. Thanks, Kyle. He hooked me up with it, gave me a pretty good price on it, and so he shipped it to me, and I've been getting it set up on my car. He had it on his car before, which uses different engine mounts and stuff, so it wasn't as much of a problem for him to get it fitted, and now it's my turn to run this thing. I actually think this might be the same supercharger that I saw on Craigslist in Phoenix years back when I first put the Beams in my car, so it's pretty cool to kind of see something kind of come around like that. So, let's talk about the supercharger. Alright, as you can see, I have the supercharger on my engine, which was a huge pain. I'll get to that in a minute. But here is the Blitz supercharger. Blitz calls it their C12. It's actually made by a company called Ogura, and it's their TX12. It's been discontinued, so you can still buy rebuild kits for it, but you can't buy a new supercharger, at least the one for the Beams that has the inlet and outlet for this setup. Blitz actually used the same supercharger on other engines like the 1ZZ and 2ZZ, and I think it's the same one that they use for their Scion supercharger kit. I could be wrong, but I don't know. All right, so to fit the supercharger, Blitz put the alternator down here using a bracket that bolts on below the oil pan, which is pretty crazy, and then you've got brackets that go from here where the stock alternator bracket stuff bolts on, so from here down to here and then across, and then you've got this guy, and you've got all these other brackets and stuff to make it fit. It's crazy because it's like, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different brackets and stuff to get this all on here and set up. It's pretty crazy. This supercharger, it uses like a clutch pulley, or a clutched pulley, like an AC compressor does, which is cool because you can command boost on and off just by activating that clutch. If you're a 4AG fanatic or an 8.6er who's been looking at 4AG stuff for a while or whatever, you're probably sitting here going, oh man, this looks so similar to the supercharger from 4AG ZE. And you would be correct. This is very, very similar in design. So that would be the SC12 and SC14. The SC12 came in the 4AG ZE and like the MR2 in the US and other Corollas and stuff overseas, but it's also similar to the SC14, which came in like the supercharged Previas from back in the day. Pretty much from what I could find is it's very similar because they're both mini root style superchargers, and it uses the same kind of coating on it, and it's very similar construction and the size and everything. But what's different is that the bearings you can still get for these, unlike the SC12 and SC14. And it looks like the inlet and outlet ports actually like on the supercharger are larger than the SC12 and SC14. So it's like an upgraded version. It's not too upgraded because the amount of volume of air that it pumps out, even at peak RPM for the supercharger and engine, it only makes about 8 PSI. The engine actually consumes all of the volume and I don't need a boost controller for it. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, it should be really good for what I'm looking for. And I really like I like the whole period correctness. The mounting kit is probably overly complicated, and I mean it's such a tight fit. Like to fit around the intake manifold, the inlet had to be custom molded and stuff to clear. Back here, because I've got custom motor mount brackets that I built, the clearances between, well, you really can't see it, but the motor mount bracket is right here, and the clearance between it and the supercharger is millimeters. This bracket here, I actually had to cut and weld and do a bunch of stuff because it didn't fit. It's meant for different motor mounts from the Altezza, so it didn't quite fit, so I had to do that. I had to modify the alternator a little bit. I had to grind down the stud so that way it was going to clear the motor mounts and everything, so that way it all fits. And it also comes with this like brace here that actually holds the intake manifold a little more firmer so it doesn't flex as much. Like I said earlier, it's actually made to work on a stock engine and transmission, a stock engine management for the Altezza. Pretty much what Blitz did is they put together this little programmer box. I'm just kind of calling it the black box. And it taps into circuits for like your throttle position sensor, your injectors, your mass airflow sensor, and so on to be able to monitor what's going on, monitor what driver demand is. And then as soon as it sees the right driver demand, it engages the supercharger clutch, the supercharger clutch pulley, and activates the supercharger. And then once it makes it into positive intake pressure, it then sees that and dumps fuel through the injectors. It's a really kind of a backwards way to control things. It's not the most efficient way, but it seems to make pretty decent power. From what I could find on forums and Facebook groups and all kinds of stuff from back in the day, and from the documentation that Blitz provides, it should make about 330 brake horsepower or about 300 wheel horsepower. The dyno sheets and information I saw were from other countries around the world, so I don't know what that means on a US dyno. Only one way to tell is to get it on a dyno and get it tuned, which should be coming in the next couple of weeks. As far as torque, those numbers seem to vary. I make about 150 foot-pounds of torque naturally aspirated, so with the supercharger, I'm hoping to make about 200 foot-pounds of torque. If I can make 200 foot-pounds of torque and 300 wheel horsepower, I would be really, really happy with the power output from this engine. That has set me about right for third gear drifting, because right now I find that I'm bogging out in third gear and I have to keep working the clutch or pump up tire pressure, do all kinds of stuff to drive around the lack of torque at that speed. Make sure to follow along or subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I've got other videos coming that are going to be for mounting the supercharger, dyno poles, and what it's like drifting with the supercharged beams. I am super excited for the extra power. I am super excited to make really cool noises, and I can't wait to drive my car with the extra power. Thanks for watching, guys.